In today's episode, we look at the remote work revolution. All right, are your employees sitting at home walking their dogs and, doing laundry all day, or are they hard at work? Either way, though, they got to stay protected.
At M2 Technology, we're on a mission to make IT accessible to everyone. Join us on our journey to demystify the ever-evolving world of business technology. Are you ready to get unplugged?
Welcome back to IT Unplugged. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to be talking about the remote workforce. More and more people are working remote. People want to work remote. A recent study showed that 62% of people at least work remote a couple days a week. So, Mike, you deal with remote workers. What are some of the most important things when you're setting up employees to work remotely?
I always like to start with asking, unless we've set up this role to work remote, with 10 other employees in the past, I always like to ask, do they actually need to work remote? And it sounds kind of goofy, except a lot of times it's like the syndrome of, hey, Jim just got a stand-up desk. Well, I want a stand-up desk. And then everyone in the office has a stand-up desk and two people actually use it. So kind of similar, related to that. So let's say that, you, in fact, do need to work remote. Great. Okay. Well, it's verified, it's vetted. How frequently? Once a year. All right. Well, maybe not so much. Sure, we can make it happen,
Sure.
but not doubting it. We just need to figure that out first. 'Cause that's kind of step one. So, okay, it's somebody that needs to work remote. It's once or twice a week. Perfect. Let's build something out. Assuming that it's that frequent, they've probably got a whole setup, right? You have a server, you've got a router, you've got everything going on. A secure way of getting access. So a VPN. VPN is convenient because probably the router that they have can do that. If not, then there's other options. We work with different places all the time that would like more security or maybe an easier form of accessing. So we'd push out maybe a different type of VPN for one place than we would for another.
So I'm going to stop you there because as somebody that sees commercials online and it's hey, you watch YouTube and half the things is Squarespace or NordVPN or something like that. So you're saying the router can help set up VPN. What's specific about, a router's VPN or a company setting up their own VPN rather than getting just a random third party thing for remote workers?
It's a good question. So they're both VPNs, right? Looking at it, one as VPN as a service for you at home to hide traffic or to disguise traffic from your internet service provider or from whoever or whatever. That's beneficial in its own light. A VPN like you would use in a business environment more so is mimicking or allowing you to connect to your work's network.
Oh, okay.
So you're at, the airport, right? And you need to view a file that only lives on your server. You don't have a copy of it anywhere else. Perfect. You have a VPN. You connect to your VPN once you're on Wi-Fi. And then your computer says, hey, guess what? I'm at work, right? And then you can see your maps drive or you can see the file or whatever it might be. So that would be step one. Step two, just like anything else now, we can deploy multifactor to that. And multifactor is definitely strongly encouraged for VPN access, right? The use case would be you leave your laptop somewhere and it's unlocked. You go to the bathroom in the airport. You're
Sure.
working on something really hardcore and I really got to go to the bathroom though. Perfect. But then you leave it open and it's unlocked and somebody sees that, right? And they steal it. They're oh, I'm going to go take this MacBook and pawn it and get $12 or whatever. They then could just connect right into the VPN, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or let's say it's even locked, but they somehow gain access to it. And then you connect to the VPN. They have an unlocked door straight into the network at the office. That's scary. So with multifactor, then at least if they were able to do that and you're able to connect, it then prompts, your phone or whatever it might be that says, hey, you're connecting. Perfect. Accept here or enter this code, which you would not do because you're well, that's goofy because my laptop was stolen yesterday when I was supposed to be working, but I was actually at that airport bar and then you're in trouble and you have a stolen laptop. It's just bad news. So
just kind of going back. So we have the VPN and then we have multi-factor authentication. And when, we'll say we talk to customers every once in a while and we make the suggestion for multi-factor authentication. It doesn't matter who they are. There's a cringe inducing thing when you say multi-factor authentication. Just the other day it happened oh, you're going to be real popular around the office when you implement that. I think we kind of know, but like sometimes you got to figure out like what the pros and cons are of a product. I think we all agree that the cons in multi-factor authentication, like it kind of stinks, right? Like you're sitting there and you got to go on your phone every single time, and sometimes they don't all talk together. But like, can you speak a little bit to the pros, how it's saved, like in your experience, how you've seen it save, breaches or companies in the past?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely I'm in the same boat as it is obnoxious at times. I mean, even this morning I was logging into our remote software Ninja, and it kicked me out for some reason. I logged in once, and then for whatever reason, like 20 minutes later, it kicked me out, and my phone was in a different room. So I'm like, "Are you joking? Like, this is ridiculous." I'm like cursing, walking across the house, just like,
oh yeah.
And then as I sat down, I'm like, "Oh man." Like, this is literally what happened last week. I was like, this is okay. But anyway, yeah, it can be obnoxious, but immensely beneficial, because then there's that second layer, more so than just a password that you have saved in your Chrome account, right?
Sure.
And you're like, next.
Yeah.
Then it makes you accept something, or it makes you enter a code or whatever. Very beneficial for peace of mind, I would say is the most... The largest takeaway is peace of mind, if anything. Sure, there's security and there's things with it, but biggest is peace of mind. Knowing that, in fact, if your employee is sitting on a couch at home at 10 p.m. and they get a prompt saying, hey, guess what? You're logging into your computer at the office. They can then, hey, that's not me. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the cleaning crew. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's somebody that's hacked in, or whatever it might be. They have the peace of mind themselves, knowing that, hey, somebody's logging in as me right now. Like, not so much, right? And they shut it down. Also, then, like, your administration has peace of mind, just knowing that people aren't just willy-nilly logging in without any recourse there. And then we have peace of mind because we know that ideally when somebody gets that prompt and it's not them, they select no. I mean, there's always
hopefully they select no.
There's always user interaction or user error that can cause some issues with that, but in an ideal world, that is not the case.
Yeah, and I would, there's other things with multi-factor authentication where, it's not just, it just pushes this button. I mean, if you're getting additional prompts from, somewhere out of country, they can step in and be like, hey, maybe we need to shut this down, send it to your IT team before, there's even an option to hit yes or no on that, right?
Yep.
So, yeah. No, your story resonates with me. I'm one of those people that gets distracted by my phone, so I put it, like when I'm working from home, I put it in another room, and then when multi-factor comes on, I'm like, son of a gun, and then you find yourself getting distracted again. You're like, I have to have it here, and then you get the text messages and everything else, and yeah. So, is there anything else, VPN, multi-factor, anything else that you think is like essential setting up remote in place?
Determining if the employee needs to remote in, like is VPN it? Hey, you just need a map drive. You need a connection to the ability to see files. Okay, then you probably just need a VPN. But let's say somebody at the office has a desktop. Okay, well, you're not going to take your desktop with you and then VPN from the desktop at the airport. Looking like a nerd with a monitor and a desktop set up at the airport. Like, that's not possible. So you would connect from like a laptop or from your phone or from a device, right? So you would have a VPN on the device and then a remote desktop connection on the device to the workstation at the office, right? So in that case, then we need to have a form of remote connection. So is that Windows, the built-in remote desktop? Is that a different offering? Whatever makes the most sense for the needs of the customer. Windows has some... all of them have benefits and negatives, but Windows has some benefits for multi-monitor. So if you're sitting at home and you've got 3 monitors at the office, great. But when you connect from your home setup and you have 2 monitors, it only shows you 1. Okay, well, maybe you'd want to connect that way with Windows Remote Desktop and select the option to use all of your monitors.
Gotcha.
So then you could have 2 at home, or maybe you have 3 or 4 at home. You can make your remote connection reflect exactly what it shows at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So that goes into a point where, a lot of times we're talking about protection, but the other thing that businesses are concerned about is efficiency, right? Like if you have someone working at home, ideally, you can read the studies and different things and how much more efficient people are at home, but that also comes into play. Like, what's your setup look like? How are you actually set up? I mean, the last thing you want is somebody that's sitting there trying to connect to a VPN over and over and over, and now they're sitting on one screen, and not having access to the things that they need. It kind of, I just know from a business owner standpoint, they're concerned about that. There's already enough stuff that comes in when it comes to remote work. Like, are my people actually working, or are they binging Netflix right now? So if you can at least get that efficiency part out of the way and set them up for success, it's a pretty big thing. So when it comes to that, the software, so you're kind of making some suggestions on software. We still have that human error. There was a stat the other day that said 95% of breaches is caused by humans, right? So how do you ensure that your employees are still being safe with company data when they're online and working remote?
It's a great question. I mean, there's a little bit of trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some trust. So they're your employee. What you trust them with at the office, we can make that be the exact same permissions as you'd have at home, right? So if you trust them with access to important financial information's shared drive, right? And there's all of the world's answers of financial questions for your office saved in that drive. They have access to that, right?
Yeah.
So if they're at home or if they're at the office or whatever, ideally they have the exact same access. So, I mean, there's some trust there. Also, having the correct permissions built out, like server-side, group policy or Active Directory, that allows that. So it's not just like you're at the office. You can find your way to this drive, but maybe when you're at home, now you're actually going to go stumble through and figure out how to get to that drive to then maybe just like snoop in there or look at HR files or whatever. So ideally, we have Brandon doesn't have access to HR. Perfect. Let's make it that way. So even if he's poking around when he's at home on the VPN, like he can't see it.
Yeah. I think what I'm hearing then too, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like really when you're working with remote employees, we can put some other things in, but like some other things like that VPN. But you kind of treat that employee as if they were in the office, right? Like, and if you have a good foundation in place with their permissions in the office and what they're able to access, then it's a whole lot easier to make them secure when it comes to the remote work as well. So from a business standpoint, like it almost seems like a building block, right? Like if you maybe were a business owner and you're saying, hey, I'm considering having some of my employees be able to work remotely, it's like you need to have that foundation in the office with the right permissions, with the right protections in place, so then you can actually push out remote employees successfully and have them be working. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, absolutely. With the proper networking, step one, the office needs to be squared away before you have remote workers. But if you have the proper networking in place, the proper Active Directory, the proper server setup, everything is happy, if you will, at the office, then correct. Then with kind of minimal effort, you should be able to then support whatever you'd like to remotely, as long as everything's squared away at the office. If you've got everything in place, but you don't have groups, so everyone can just see everything. If you're okay with that, cool. But typically, most often that's not the case. Normally there's something somewhere on the server or, something somewhere on a drive somewhere that is intentionally not viewed by everyone.
Sure.
So you need to have that all in place before you just send somebody home and you're just like, have fun.
Yeah. So you work with a lot of different companies and we both work remote every once in a while, What are some ways that you've seen, so this is maybe a little bit more of a non-technical question, but ways that companies have kept their employees that are working remotely, like engaged and connected at the company and kind of, keeping them like focused on company objectives and goals kind of the same way?
Well, I guess we could refer to that kind of personally here, right? So if there's a day, it's Halloween, like it's a dress up day or it's a whatever. Internally, we would remote, it's like video conference, Teams meeting, with, let's say it's Halloween, right? There's a pumpkin carving contest, that type of thing. Maybe you show yours on a Teams meeting at 1 p.m. today and, everybody gets to order in food or whatever. So you get a similar or perhaps the same experience as you would as in the office, and maybe the employee, depending on the employee, maybe they don't like to see people and they like that more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get your screen time for 20 minutes and then you're like, all right, see you guys later. Like,
Yeah.
oh, thank the Lord.
Yeah.
Where's my Qdoba?
Yeah, that's so funny you mentioned that, because a previous company that I was at, it was all, everybody was remote, essentially. There was an HQ, but so when we had, like, that was a way that we stayed engaged, is they sent everybody essentially a gift card and said, go out to your favorite place to eat and we're all going to eat lunch together, And, during COVID, I think companies got more and more used to doing those things, social happy hours.
Creative, and I mean, it's small, right?
Yeah.
But, like, I think that's better than in that case, like, doing what, like nothing, or having some sort of mandatory fun type thing, and like,
mandatory fun was a thing too, though. I
that's
think every once in a while, right? During COVID, it's like you must attend our happy hour.
It's a happy hour.
Yeah, we will be happy.
Everyone's happy. Don't even think about not being happy.
Yeah, it's interesting. For April Fools, I saw a joke online, and it was a really good marketing piece where everybody at the company, it's a fully remote company, and they all said, hey, I'm no longer a remote employee. I need to, we are going back to the office. And they did this whole thing where they actually set up it was a giant office, and they set up cubicles and said, like, welcome. It was Chili, I think it's called Chili Piper. It was pretty funny. But, all the remote employees from 30 different countries around the world had to come into New York and relocate immediately and be in the office in the next month. And it just kind of shows, like, that poking fun, like the generation that's coming into the workforce now, and even some others, they really value remote work. So when you hear these things about, companies that are saying you must come back to the office in a month, it's kind of like a giant eye roll. Like, what's going to happen? So, I don't know. There's a lot of pushback there from the current generation in the workforce.
Yeah, we see that with vendors that we work with, and then also customers. But we see that with everyone, right? Where there's kind of 2.5 pools of thought on remote workers, or permanent or semi-permanent remote workers, where it's like the all for it, the two ends of the spectrum, right? All for it or all against it. And this part of the U.S., like the Midwest, seems to be a little bit more old school with thinking on that, and they're kind of really against it. But I think that where that comes from is just like if we don't see you at the office, you're not doing anything. You're doing your laundry, and you're walking your dog, and you're taking a nap, and it's like, well, I mean, kind of what we see is actually the opposite. And there's obviously exceptions, people that abuse anything. But that kind of is what it is. And then the other end of the spectrum is the hardcore, like anything can be done remote. Don't even be here. No one can come in. It's like there's a balance. I guess depending on the line of work. Obviously, like a doctor can't perform surgery remotely, but maybe some of his assistants or his staff that's doing medical coding for him, like, maybe that can be done remotely one day a week, or whatever it might be.
And it's I think flexibility is the big thing there, right? Like giving employees the option. And if you're in a line of work that you just can't be remote, like then it's one of those things that you kind of need to be like, hey, I chose a line of work where I can't be remote, and it's okay if some other people around me maybe aren't. But yeah, it's interesting and something that's not going to go away, obviously. So investing in it now and being set up for it, I think COVID propelled us forward with that. But remote work, it's something that's here to stay, and something that businesses need for retaining talent or attracting talent, and then on top of that, protecting their business as well. So that's it for today with IT Unplugged. We want to appreciate you just coming on over, stopping by, and listening to us. Feel free to subscribe on all the channels, and if your company is looking for a remote work kind of setup, feel free to reach out to M2 Technology. We'd be happy to help out.